Uh, October 13th, recording for the Kubernetes scaling SIG begin. We did have a request from Dina to walk us through some of the scalability work they've been doing.
Yes, I may start, but I may start. So just a reminder, I've been looking through what this group is doing since August. I've introduced myself someone in August 6 scale meetings. And recently Miranti Scalar and the team started some basic researches around Kubernetes and OpenStack on top of Kubernetes. And we have published some results we have done. So basically what we did, I just posted link to the chat, is running e2e load.go tests that are used, as far as I know, by you guys as well, on top of bare metal installed Kubernetes. So we didn't use the any Google Cloud Engine or whatever our other provider. We installed Kubernetes on bare metal using a cargo deployment tool. It's basically a set of Ansible scripts to install the Kubernetes, and used Calico for the overlay networking, simply because we had such requests to check how Calico will behave as a overlay networking tool. And we simply ran the load.go tests from E2E test suite against up to 355 nodes. That was maximum we had at the lab on that moment. And just shared the results. It was 10, 50, and 355 nodes. So I just posted link to the chat, so most probably you can take a look on it. If you find it interesting, that's cool. And one more test that we have done, it's not probably a test, just an experiment. We created a small test suite that is checking pod startup latency, meaning real container workability when containers are really become available, and report about the availability to some common master. So, and check what pod startup time will be if we'll just push up to 100 pods per node. Sadly, we forgot to configure Kubernetes that time to allow more pods to be pushed, because as far as I know, there's some limitation about 110 pods per node if it's not configured in other design, but we'll rerun it with higher density. We would like to see how it will behave if we'll have higher density. And basically we had about 50 milliseconds per container startup with 100 pods per node density. So pretty good results, I believe. So, and I see comment that Calico would greatly affect the results. So I believe yes, that would. But do you have some links or probably I don't know, some information about how this will influence and when?
You're not. Calico isn't a straight overlay, right? It's my understanding that Calico uses BGP propagation for your information, so it's not like a strict overlay. So you're not doing the stripping, right?
Yeah. Yeah, basically, yes.
Yeah. So if you have any throughput in your tests at all, like even the networking itself would probably be faster. So.
Yeah. So we're going to check several versions in future and just play around the parameters and see how it will go. So as said, nothing too fancy. We use the same test tool as Google folks are using, but still.
Well, what networking are you using for OpenShift, Tim?
We have our own SDN plugin.
Is it sort of similar to Calico and?
No. It's full SDN. So it's, if we want speed, we have customers that tweak with VXLAN offloads and all the other jazz that comes along with that.
And can you please pass links to this plugin? So just to take a look.
Sure, I can put it in the chat window or
Yeah.
open chat as Gina.
Yeah, thank you.
Any surprises, observations?
I would say that everything was pretty okay and was in line with the blog posts um, about 2,000 nodes testing and about 1,000 nodes testing previously for earlier versions of Kubernetes. So the only moment that started behaving suspiciously when we were in fact running OpenStack on top of Kubernetes. For instance, we frequently are observing issues with freezing Docker under the load or during the OpenStack installation when we are starting lots of containers at once, like when we are deploying OpenStack simply on top of Kubernetes. So Docker is freezing somewhere on the syscalls without even putting any debugging to its logs. So it's kind of a bit disturbing issue, and we're currently trying to debug what's going on. So this happened with various Docker versions. We tried several of them. So we don't, yeah.
What version worked best? I know this has been a regular topic for this group.
Yeah, I believe so. So the last version we tried was sorry, let me just check. It's a bit scale. One moment, guys. So during these tests, we were using 1.11.2, but we also run 1.12.1, and right now we're checking 1.12.2. So yeah, and this is not happening with the equal frequency. I mean, sometimes it's happening more frequent, sometimes less. So I'm not sure, in fact, what is the influencing pattern here, because basically we did the same workloads on top of Kubernetes every time we're observing these issues, but sometimes we have kind of 10% of nodes freezing, sometimes 1% of nodes freezing. So it's just some random pattern. So also one more interesting moment was that under load on OpenStack that is installed on top of Kubernetes, sometimes DNS scheme we used that is basically installed by Cargo. So this is DNS stack. I just posted the link to the diagram that is used for this installation. Sometimes DNS stop working as it is supposed to, so we have observed couldn't resolve names of OpenStack services under huge load, but most probably this is as expected, and we're trying to find the bottleneck right now. But if you say about synthetic tests, like running just API testing against Kubernetes, it was pretty okay. I mean, and very in line with the numbers you guys got already on virtual environments. So basically the same, a bit faster, but it's less nodes and bare metal, so it should be faster.
This is good stuff.
Yeah, so we're going to continue, and right now we are kind of defining the Q4 ideas, what we can do in Q4, and etc. So something upcoming.
You're just baiting us with comments now.
Sorry.
Well, so I guess I had two questions. The first, it looks like the test results you showed us were run with Kubernetes 1.3.5. Have you had an opportunity to look at Kubernetes 1.4.0 or 1.4.1?
We are currently installing it in small environment, yes, because we have plans for this huge env. So basically, Scalar and DTM has lots of tasks to do, and Kubernetes itself is not the only thing we need to go through. Right now, we're installing 1.4.0 on 30 nodes, and we will continue debug Docker freezing issue on this small environment, just emulating high enough load. But yeah, we are doing it right now, but not on that scale. I mean, in fact, 1.4.0 was installed on 150 nodes bare metal by us, and we ran pod latency startup measurements exactly against 1.4.0. I need to put this information to the results. I forgot to mention that there was other version used to pod startup latency measurements. Yes, so we tried it against 150 nodes.
Aaron, you're muted.
What was that?
I think Aaron is speaking. I don't know if it's to us or something else, someone else, but he's muted.
Yes, I don't hear Aaron.
Okay, sorry about that. Let's try that again. So my next question was related to the link I posted. This
Yeah.
looks like an awesome time series graph of a MySQL master minion cluster coming up over time. And it seems like it's a good validation of like an end user workload on this cluster. Now, I think last week, Jeremy Ager presented some concepts around this cluster loader or workload generator tool that I think other folks within Red Hat are working on. And Merrick, I'm sure you probably know more about this than I do. We're trying to get some of this work to go inside of this new perf tests repo that's owned by the scalability group here. I was curious if these efforts are related at all, or if it would be worth getting folks to talk to each other here.
I guess it's really worth talking to each other because this tool was written really quickly to check pod startup latency by us, but I think we need to coordinate here for sure. And I'm really eager to see the tool by Red Hat, and probably we can just use it or somehow improve it and use it, etc. Because this tool that we used was really simple and just.
Yeah, we're working on it right now.
Okay.
And we're going to get it we're going to try and merge it into the perf repo, hopefully as soon as possible. And this kind of leads into my next question, which is like Wojtek and I were kind of bantering a little bit about the 5,000 node goal, And I know we're using the legacy tests against that, but the question I have is, as we start to beat on it with our cluster loader and other things, what does that even mean? Because the performance at 5,000 nodes against your VM is very optimistic, right? And most of the tests that I run are very pessimistic, right? Because the optimistic tests don't have your other controllers firing and a whole bunch of services running. If you're measuring against density itself, it's a very there's a lot less busy things going on in the system.
Yeah, so sure. I agree that like having better tests is better, but so as long as we don't have them, we are using the ones that we have basically.
Yeah, I just want to be cautious that if we put out a number like 5,000 as a SIG, right? Or if Google puts out a number like 5,000, that number can hold up against scrutiny in a real clustered environment, right? Because what we found, even on several hundred or 1,000 nodes, is that like the endpoints issue crops up in huge bad ways, right? So like we have thousands of services running, right, and coming and going, and when you have that, the endpoints are literally saturating nodes and eating up a ton of bandwidth from the masters. So
yeah, I completely agree. Like it will be pretty much the same as what we have with 2000 now, which also you can potentially break.
yeah.
I don't know, these sound like maybe things that need to be tacked onto that whole scalability goals document we put in the Kubernetes community repo. Because it looks like there we are spelling out, like we realized it's not just a one number thing. There are a variety of metrics we should be watching, but open question at the end is like, so what's an actual use case for this? If we're trying to drive these metrics towards like a human factor, like what's the responsiveness for a human or what's the responsiveness for a given workload, we probably ought to spell that out or at least put a to-do that this isn't yet spelled out and we could really use some help figuring out what the right cases to track are.
Yes. I think once we open source some of the work, or it's already open source, but once we put it in the community arena, we can start to have that shared test plan and shared test metrics and results. Because then anybody can run the same experiment and get different results and share it with the community, so long as they're running the same test, right? Right now, I mean, like I think maybe for next week, I should probably run through how we do our analysis. And I mentioned that last time. And we're, like I mentioned before, we're pretty pessimistic because we want to make sure that our customers, even if it's on the low side of things, are well within the bounds of a fully saturated type of environment. Because what often has a tendency to happen is we find the large scale abusive customers who then take your numbers, ignore them, and go beyond them. And in those environments, then as long as we give out pessimistic numbers, we're kind of fudging it a little bit, but it works. It's working better, I should say. But I would be remiss if I were to like give a number like 5,000 and a customer gets close to that with certain profiles that we have and the cluster explodes. That's when I'm literally being shipped off somewhere.
Yeah. Have you reminded them it's the phrase at most 5,000, not at least 5,000?
Yeah. But
my other question, I guess, was I think we were talking at one point in time, maybe Merrick was helping lead this discussion around like SLOs for individual controllers. If we're saying that controllers are the thing that actually implement end user facing functionality, and the cases that I've heard you bring up most frequently, Tim, are, hey, guess what happens when you're actually running a bunch of controllers trying to handle real user workloads? That's where the system seems to act really weird. Like things like density test and the load test don't actually simulate those conditions. And I think those are sort of more of the real world scenarios that we're trying to figure out here.
Yeah, like we also need to figure out like which metrics we actually care about. Like, of course, like for example, network propagation, like kubeproxy endpoint propagation is the important one. But like, for example, like, do we really care how quickly deployment can update replica sets? Like, as long as it's reasonable, like, do we really want to push the throughput higher? And so we actually need to create a list of things that we think are important, like, because not everything is, but some things other than that we are currently measuring are. But like, we need to find like a sweet spot there.
Yeah, basically throughput is an important thing because obviously at any scale, like there is some throughput that the cluster supports, and there is some throughput from some boundary it won't support the throughput. So this is like pretty important to say, like, that we support given throughput, but not anything higher.
But again, only on particular resources. So I think we need to work on like creating a list of things we actually care about mostly.
Yeah, I guess the reason I bring it up is because I feel like we chatted about this a little while ago, and I'm not sure if it stalled out or we decided that that's not worth the effort at that point in time or what. But I mean, this is a great idea, but I'm trying to understand maybe like, are we trying to land any of this in the 1.5 timeframe, or are we talking about sort of loftier goals that we're aiming for long term?
Well, I think it was a priority problem, right? I think everybody agrees that this is something we need to do, but it becomes kind of difficult sometimes because we're almost like an overlay group, right? So sometimes we have these conflicting priorities that prevent us from doing that. So I agree. We should almost set aside like a set of P0 priorities and P1s, because that's not something we've done as a SIG, fundamentally. Like other SIGs literally have the devoted resources towards the P0 and P1 items. But if we, as a group, decide to do that, I think we would happily, have a resource go along with defining those metrics and start to create tests to measure against them. But I think we need to start to maybe clean house, so to speak, so that we have deliverables for a given release, and that those deliverables have fly cover from PM. That's another problem, right? Because Google's PM and our PM, sometimes they choose priorities. So we need to make sure if we say it's going to be a P0, we have P0 fly cover, right?
And I think that the cluster loader thing is a great first step, because then we will actually be able to easily create, it will be easier to create a dedicated test. So, benchmarks.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it and wouldn't mind continue talking about cluster loader actually. But before I do that, is there anything else on the agenda that we're taking time away from?
I briefly touched on most of the things except for the etcd3 update and state, just getting like a PSA down the list. Endpoints is a big problem that needs addressing. It's a huge problem, in fact.
Is this the IP tables, pushing tables all the time thing?
It's more than that. Want to go, Bob?
I said I'm just kind of horrified by that bug. I mean, the amount of sort of like network traffic at scale. So I think, shifting the thinking around taking that stuff seriously, it's probably worthwhile.
Yeah, I'm getting diverted to that. We have to talk on our side on fixing that one.
Can we have a quick discussion about the proposal for configuration dumping? I know we've talked about this in the past. I just want to get kind of the ball rolling basically in getting some code done. So Level Up had a look at the proposal, and the proposal was built based on the discussion we had 2 weeks ago on config dump. And his comments were along the lines that the proposal will only work really for kubelet and will not work for all other components in the control plane. He suggests that for that, we actually just get configurations from config maps, flags, etc. at the pod level, as opposed to just component configs from the components, which is kind of not what we agreed to, not what we discussed. So like some thought on that, some discussion about where we should go, what approach should we take, what's the right approach we take, etc. Just to show kind of like a proof of concept that we can actually get configs. I actually have a PR with tests that does expose an endpoint for kubelet /config component configs, and does give you the full component configs for that component. And it's on the agenda here. So anyway, any thoughts?
I got to be honest, I haven't had time to sort of read up on the issue and the latest there and to understand exactly why the plan wouldn't work for the control plane pieces.
It would be awesome if you could find a few minutes to take a look at it and give us some feedback.
Yeah, I'll try and find the time. All right, but yeah, I honestly I haven't had time to dig in. I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
No worries. It doesn't seem like it shouldn't work. It just seems like there's a lot of work that hasn't been done yet to get the component config maps for the components. And so I think that's kind of guiding that suggestion from LangLab. I'm just speaking from what I know right now.
Oh, okay. So I can see the fact that the component config stuff is much further ahead for the kubelet than everything else.
Correct. Yeah, and that's where I think his approach is. But I don't want this kind of like half-done approach where you have to live in two worlds. I want like a definite approach where we actually are going in the future and we will get all information now.
So on the cluster life cycle, there is we've been talking about sort of making it be easier to configure a cluster as you're bringing it up as part of like kubeadmin and other sort of tools. And sort of, we were looking at component config as one of the key pieces there of finishing that off. Unfortunately, I'm looking at the OKRs and it just hasn't bubbled to the top in terms of sort of what's happening in this quarter.
And one of the intentions of my PR is actually show like, hey, look, this is really cool. Component config is the way to go. Maybe we should do this and do this now, you know? Kind of motivate people to go forward.
Yeah, just finish it off, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so that's 2 PRs. Please have a look. I'll post them on the chat here. And let's see if we can get this rolling.
We'll probably reach out. We may reach out to Daniel as well and see if we can have a wider chat about it as well, longer chat. So.
Yes. I did it again. Sorry, I was getting pinged on other things. Yeah, I kind of want to see code actually happen and see if we can move forward here. My main question is like, as long as we don't think this is exposing any security concerns, then great, let's move forward. If it is exposing security concerns, I think there was mention of getting SIG auth involved to see like what work had been done to get that.
I do mention that in my PR, and I'm using actually the same framework that the /metrics endpoint is using. So
yeah.
You would have the same security already in place, but you know, I need someone SIG auth to just go ahead and that's fine. Let's go.
Yeah, we could really use some attention there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't know that we hit the etcd3 stuff hard enough here. Let's see, Tim, did you want to tee up a specific question or?
What's the current issues you're seeing, Wojtek? You're seeing the 500s?
Sorry. Yes, but I've seen this 500s with 4,000 node kubemark cluster with like significantly increased QPS limits, which may or may not be like expected. I just did this experiment first time today, and like we had some infrastructure issues, so I don't have logs, and I'm going to like try to gather all the necessary logs tomorrow. But yeah, but basically the problems that we were talking last week, which was basically like pretty slow watch and etcd3 slower than etcd2, with the new patch release like 3.0.12 and some minor changes on our side. Now etcd3 is significantly better than etcd2.
So is the testing infrastructure all flopped over yet, or is that still a TBD item for upstream PRs and everything else? Like the full testing infrastructure?
So it should be like, it should work now, I think, basically. So basically like today I had issues explicitly with logs, like with gathering logs from kubemark runs, not with like the infrastructure itself. It was only about like gathering logs and only from kubemark clusters, which is...
Yeah, I don't want to conflate the two problems. It's just a question of whether or not all of the per pull PR automation has been flopped over to testing etcd3 by default or not.
Sorry. So etcd, no, there is like in-flight PR that will enable etcd3 per PR builder, but we need to like, yes, there needs to be done some tweaking of like resources and number of agents and stuff like that. It hopefully will be done today. So hopefully like today, tomorrow, we start running etcd3 per PR. etcd3 tests per PR. Wait, so does it answer your question?
Yes, it does. It's using v3 client though, right? You're going to use v3 client that gets that?
Yes. It's 3.0.12 binary etcd in v3 mode. v3 API, using v3 API, yes.
Okay, Tim, you got to say something more about 301 since you continue to post interesting tidbits in chat here.
Well, Wojtek had uncovered the watch performance issue with V301, or it was actually 310, I believe, 3010. And so we can't, the previous versions are not something that you'd want to use at a larger scale because there's known deficiencies or issues. And that patch was only backpatched on 3012.
So like basically there are some bugs that we fixed in watch and also like other places, and also like the upstream use has updated to like.
Chow, we really can't hear you. Can you close to the mic, maybe?
Can you hear me now?
Better.
Okay, so like we fixed a bunch of issues in the watch and like some other places, and also like we update the upstream to like 3012. The upstream client will use the 3012 as well. It would be better like to upgrade to 3012.
Sounds like consensus. I think we're starting to run a little bit over here. Any final thoughts, topics? All right, this was very good today. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in the community meeting.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.